about Backbone? We are a digital agency conceived by unbought and unbossed Black women. That is a nod to our ancestor Shirley Chisholm, who ran a historic presidential campaign back in 1972. We were founded in 2020 when I came off of the Elizabeth Warren campaign as her Texas mobilization director. Shout out to Jaime, another mobilization director in the audience. And everyone was trying to figure out how to move their ground operations online. I'm sure y'all remember that moment, right? Because we were supposed to be quarantining, people were knocking doors, all of a sudden they were told to go home. And so Backbone actually came to be during that moment. We helped a school board candidate in New Orleans. We helped a community organizer who was running for mayor in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But we got our big break, and go to the next slide, when someone at When We All Vote, Michelle Obama's organization, heard about some of the work we were doing and brought us on board to help organize ahead of that election. So we work with a ton of organizations like Fair Fight. We helped elect the first Black district attorney in Manhattan, who just prosecuted Donald Trump. We elected the first Haitian American on the Boston City Council. Shout out to another Warren alum. And so that's us, and I'm so excited to talk to y'all about some of the other exciting work we've done with amazing groups like Houston in Action.
Thanks, guys. So Houston in Action, I often like to describe as a group of groups, that ranges across the board from grassroots organizations run by 1-2 dedicated people who lots of times are, all the money they bring in is being put towards the work that they're doing, to larger statewide organizations that are really well-resourced. Advocacy organizations. In some of our campaigns, we work with government, academic institutions. But the thing that brings everybody together is that they are focused on increasing civic engagement, civic participation, access, breaking down systemic barriers to civic participation for communities of color, low-income families, LGBTQ folks, young people, in all of those intersections. And that's really what brings people together. We like to define civic participation not in the popular definition of civic participation, which is oftentimes electoral power, but rather in our group's ability to organize at the community level, not just for elections, but for the day-to-day issues that they face. And so, as part of that, the campaign that we're talking about today did come together around the 2022 elections. We call it Grow the Circle. We had at that time about 50 organizations, all who'd come together to coordinate, to show resources, to share data, to be able to door knock, to make calls, to do texts, to do tabling, to show up where we knew potential voters were. All 501c3 nonprofit work, nonpartisan work. And of course, as a part of that, we were like, hey, we know that there's a lot of power in digital organizing, but we also know that these people are the folks who are the faces of the organization. They're the people that the people in our network are the people who people come to for their day-to-day problems, their day-to-day issues. They're the face of their neighborhoods, and that could be really, really powerful when put in the hands of a digital organizing leadership like that Backbone.
Thank you. I feel like I'm going to be blushing throughout this presentation. All right, so how did a multiracial, multi-generational, and interfaith group of Texans like Chris defy expectations to galvanize the second highest midterm? Let's get into results. We're going to work backwards. So through this campaign in 6 weeks, working with 24 different grassroots organizations across Harris County, we created over 150 15 to 30 second accessible videos. We translated those into 7 languages. Now, full disclosure, we only had one other language on our team at Backbone, someone who spoke Spanish, but the groups represented spoke 7 different languages. So, how do we scale that? We use Google Translate as a place to start. Again, digital accessibility advocate here, fully telling y'all, hire your translators if you can, if you have the budget. If you don't, there are free resources that you can lean on for a first pass. So what we did is we translated in 7 languages, and then we asked the groups who spoke those languages to just make sure that it was accurate, right? Then we gave folks plenty of time to submit their videos. We had 3 different rounds of video submissions over the 6 weeks. we said, hey, for everyone who wants to turn in a video, here's your prompt. My name is Jess Moore Matthews, and I'm knocking on doors because what, right? So we got a ton of videos during that first round, but there are a couple folks, mostly older, mostly folks who were like a little more hesitant to be online, who actually waited for the second round. They wanted to see what those videos look like. They wanted to see some examples. So we gave them 3 rounds to submit, and actually the videos got more and more creative as we went, so you'll see that. How did this turn out, and how did it shake out in terms of results? We had an 80% average video completion rate for everyone who saw these videos, and you'll see that scale in a second. But that's compared to an industry benchmark of about 70%. So what does that mean in plain language? Everyone who watched the videos that our participants created, watched it, 80% of them watched it in completion, watched it to the end, okay? So in terms of scale, we received 7 million impressions across Harris County during the campaign. These were all registered voters. And of those folks who we reached, 3 million of them actually stopped scrolling to watch the video, okay? As soon as Chris walks away, my arrow doesn't work. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so that turned into us reaching 40% of our registered voters in Harris County, which in my book, in our history, is possibly more than we've ever done. Of course, digital was a part of that. We had people knocking doors, we had people making phone calls. And the real amazing part of that was that we were able to track that over 150,000 people that were touched by the campaign ultimately cast their ballot and voted on election, or before or on election day, which was about 15% of that turnout. So, how did we get to be in a position where we could actually implement a campaign like this? Well, we've been at it for a while. As I mentioned, we're going into our 5th year at Houston in Action. Houston in Action really was born out of census work in 2018 really. And what that did was offer us an opportunity to bring a lot of folks doing community-based work in Houston together, to get to know each other, to learn how to work together, how to coordinate work together, how to build campaigns together, and ultimately down the road, how to fundraise together. All of this, at any given time, we probably, I would say our network is about anywhere between 90 and 100 organizations. A lot of people flow in and out, of course, depending on the campaigns. But at any given time, there are about 50 to 60 active organizations. And at any given time, we may be involved in a campaign. We may be supporting an individual or a much smaller group of organizations, issue organizing, doing training together, doing capacity building together, or fundraising together. And really this has been the foundation of what made it possible for people to move into a place for voter mobilization. We know, like I said before, like elections are a moment, right? But we all know that we should all be organizing, working together year round, not just showing up before an election to be effective. And so for 2022, the goals were to mobilize voters of color so that we could have an electorate that actually represents what Houston looks like, the way that Houston thinks, because right now, obviously, a lot of forces have worked against that. Wanted to make sure that we had elected officials that were accountable to our groups, accountable to our communities of focus. And we wanted to also make sure that, not just as a collective, but also at the individual organization level, that we were able to advance the goals of our individual organizations, whether they have goals related to housing, whether they have goals related to criminal justice, whether they have goals related to environmental racism. We wanted to make sure that the work that we're doing together is supportive of those causes as well. And of course, at the root of this is, as I mentioned earlier, we have groups that are, I think of Belay and Zed, who are out in Southwest Houston, who are literally 2 grandmothers who are like, we know that there's support that we can offer to the Ethiopian community in Southwest Houston. Like, can you support us? And the support for them looks like sometimes we've had to go and say like, this is how you check email. And so the idea that we could bring them into a digital campaign with tools that are accessible to the largest organizations, to the largest efforts, and make that possible for them to use digital as a tool was a key part of our goals for 2022. And of course, this is ongoing, but the idea that like we're doing this digital organizing not in this one vacuum of elections, but that we're doing this work for the next 5 years. And so what we learned about voters in 2022, we want to make sure that we can maintain access and process in 2023, 2024, and build and keep building. So, okay, this is a training. So, like, how do we put these thoughts into application for you all? You know, as I mentioned before, having a collective vision, mission, knowing where our values align was key to being able to bring this number of groups together in a collective effort. Having that experience of having built together, of having built trust, making sure that we're investing at the micro level in our leadership. That example of Belay and Zed, you know, my colleague Ali driving out to their house in Southwest Houston was an investment. They saw that we were dedicated and interested in seeing them succeed. And that was critical to us ultimately being successful. And then of course, like I've already said, supporting organizing, not just in the moments that the elections show up, but all year round. And being able to know that for our groups to know that we support them in their organizing. As I mentioned, we also have, you know, sharing resources, right? Who here feels so comfortable talking about money?
Nice.
Like, okay, we got a couple people in the back. All right. Well, let me tell you what. Vast majority, as evidenced by the people in the room, vast majority of folks are not comfortable talking about money. And so, one of the things that was contributed greatly, or has contributed greatly, I think, to building that trust, building that coalition and partnership, has been our ability to talk about the power dynamics around funding, the way in which funding and funders may or may not shift our direction, our focus, and ultimately try to democratize the process of distributing funds that come in. As a collective, we've been able to fundraise. When that money comes in, we enter into participatory funding decision-making processes. And so that creates dialogue around tactics, approaches, what we value here versus there, what we don't value, and all of these things. It's messy, y'all, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sit up here and say, it was a breeze, it's great. It's really messy, but we think it's important and we're committed to it. And I think as we continue to do it, it will become less messy. And so for anyone thinking about what participatory funding processes can look like, know that it can be tough up front, but it does get easier with strong facilitation. I mentioned earlier that the idea of access to the tools that big groups have, being accessible to smaller groups was a big part of what we were able to do. So look for ways that you can take these big tools and make them accessible. And if there's interest and capacity, maybe not just make them accessible, but make them functional for people. Where our goal is here to move from, I see your question, I'll get to it, to where we don't just have our mobilize, but our groups can run their own mobilizes eventually. Yes, I saw it.
How did you make every action mobilize campus and how do you make those accessible when they have the cost?
So when we looked at fundraising, and we've done this a couple of different ways, but when we collectively fundraised, we all agreed, all right, we all need every action. Do we all need every action? Yes, okay, we all need every action. And then we set aside some of those funds to pay for every action. And so no matter whether you were a $1 million organization or a 5-digit organization, you had access to the same tools because we have what we call a shared community fund. And so I think that goes for all the tools up there. Even the costs associated with calls and texts. We said it's gonna come out of the shared community fund. Even if you make 100,000 texts, and I'm over here, I'm only gonna make 100, it's still coming from the shared community fund, because we felt that that was an important value to put into the space. Of that, we're all here working together. We might spend different amounts of money, but ultimately, we all share a collective benefit when we all. Thank you. Yeah, and then these last 2 points, or the second to last point, is that the other thing that we did is that we look at capacity building, not just as ability to train someone to understand a thing, which is often the definition of capacity building, of positive growth. But we look at capacity building as who from our team at Houston in Action can staff that event. Who can go there and do the social media for that event? Not just who can we train to do social media at that event. And of course, we meet, and this is part of meeting people where we're at, right? We know that well-resourced organizations don't need that kind of support, but the ones that don't, we're able to show up and offer that kind of support. And then finally, the digital advertising. I think with that. Yeah. So I'm almost to my hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is really just a recap of the things that we just talked about. These are the things that we felt were important to make this possible.
Yeah, I just want to shout out the Houston in Action team because, I don't know how many of y'all contract with organizations or you're doing digital work, but sometimes it's rare that you have folks within the organization who are like, tell me what you want to do, we're here to support you, right? And Houston in Action was all the way like that for us at Backbone. So when we said, hey, we want to record all these videos for folks, we want to make sure that they represent the diversity of your leadership and your membership. We want to make sure we're speaking to those grandmothers, right, in Houston who can't get out of their house, who are in a wheelchair. We want to make sure that they get videos too. Chris's team was like, bet. Like, where do they live? Let's go, let's go to them, let's record these videos, let's get them to the site so that they can be in the picture. And so I just really, really am so grateful for the partnership that we have with them because they are the folks who are like, I'm not a social media manager, you're gonna have to tell me how to hold the phone, but I'm there, I'm gonna go and record it and get you what you need, right? So let's talk about how we prioritize accessibility. My favorite topic. I'm trying not to turn this into a whole accessibility training, but. I know, right? This is why we have captions though, and people like Mike, who I'm sure is, there we go. Can y'all still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
我们一起去投票。
Third से निकले और मैं मतदान करें।
Các em đi投票。
我哋一齊去投票。
我们参加我哽咽，杀了我的。
投票对我们很重要。
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Daniel Candelaria, yo soy un organizador con Avenue y estamos llamando y mandando textos a la comunidad del Greater Northside Harris County para asegurarnos que todas las voces sean escuchadas en estas elecciones del 2022. ¿Salgan a votar?
Yes, okay, at least y'all got to see two. We got more coming. Let's see if they all load. They just did such great work. I want to show my
Te invito a que tú también lo hagas en estas elecciones. El voto la tienes cuenta.
Project, and I'm not going to go as far as Harris County because I support trans rights. Are you?
That's Bernice. I didn't want her to miss her intro.
I'm knocking on doors across Harris County because I care about criminal justice reform. You in?
Nice,
That was one of our
nice.
wheelchair users who the Houston Action Team went to.
Beautiful.
Migrant refugees and
This is the live.
I am Brian Darkey with Migrant Refugees and Immigrants Leadership Academy. I'm knocking doors across Harris County because I care about immigrant issues. You in?
Love it. So let's go to the next slide, which I think should show you the map. So these videos are powerful in and of themselves, right? But imagine, one of these folks goes to the community center that you went to growing up to. They go to your mosque, your church, your synagogue, right? And you're seeing them, you're scrolling on Instagram, mind your business, and all of a sudden you see that grandmother from your church, like, wait, what? This was the experience that folks across Harris County had throughout the campaign. Miss Tangi, who was the wheelchair user that we showed the video, she said she was actually approached on a bus. Someone was like, did I just see you on? Right. So she was riding the bus and was approached, and people were like, wait, you're the one who told me to go vote. So, these folks were literally hyper-targeted to their own neighborhood, which was the coolest part about this campaign. The Chinese Community Center is an institution in Bel Air. They were targeted there. Avenue, Daniel Candelaria was targeted to the north side. Bridges to Empowerment, who you'll soon see, was targeted to Mo City. Mecca was targeted to Central Houston. Mahogany Project with Bernice was targeted to Southwest Houston. And so we really, really drove into the specific neighborhoods that these folks were coming from to make sure their messages met their actual neighbors. So the same doors that they were knocking, these were the same people who were seeing on their phones. So how can you do it? Begin with the end in mind. Chris came to Backbone with a really specific vision. We want to meet voters every single place that they are. We're meeting them at these events, we're meeting them at their doors, we're meeting them on the way to the polls. Can we also meet them on the networks that they're on, right? So we said absolutely, and I don't know if is Mary Ellen in the room? No? Okay, well, we worked with an organization, DS Political, to really dig into that targeting, and we used a platform called Deploy. Highly recommend it. They scan the voter file and are actually able to match the voter ID with your IP address to find those voters in their specific neighborhood. Don't be scared. But you want to begin with the end in mind. Meeting people everywhere they are was our main goal, right? And so it took figuring out what networks are these folks on, what websites are they surfing. We actually ran these programmatically, which means we ran them on the most popular websites across Harris County, so that folks were able to see these videos on the Weather Channel, right? I think that was one of the top websites. They were able to see it on the local NBC station website.
That's great.
We thought about language access from the very beginning. This is so key when you're thinking about accessibility. Do not let accessibility be something that you're scrambling to figure out at the last minute. Go into it trying to figure out, okay, how are we gonna make sure that we're translating the videos? How are we gonna make sure that we have captions that are accessible? So that's something we're able to build in, get the community's buy-in. They were fully prepared when we sent those videos that had been translated with Google Translate. They knew what their responsibility was. They had opted into it. So think about it from the very beginning. Think about cultural alignment. We've heard a lot these last 3 days about trusted messengers, right? We need to be partnering with the folks in the community who haven't heard terms like ladder of engagement and all the things that have been thrown around these past few days. Like, let's find the folks who are honestly just living their lives, doing the good work, and who would honestly be more trusted if they tell you to go vote, right? Who are those folks in your life? Think about the neighborhood identity. Again, targeting folks to their own neighborhood, making sure that folks see them and are familiar and are immediately trusting of their message. And then integrate captions and alternative text. This is so important. Hopefully y'all have heard about this in some of the other sessions. There are too many free captioning tools for people to not have captioned videos. That's all I'm gonna say, okay? Instagram will do it for you these days. That's not the case a few years ago. Find a way to caption your videos. I like to use Canva to caption. That's also another tool. So definitely spread the wealth if you have others in mind. And test your color contrast. That is a little sneaky. That was a little more advanced, but you can test your color contrast with some free tools. Just Google them and you can figure out if the color contrast is high enough for folks who are blind or low vision, okay? It's just really quick, you can do at the end of your graphic process to make sure that everything is accessible. Okay, and then finally, I really want to show y'all what they did. We were testing, we were actually meeting with these folks on a regular basis to showcase the videos to each other. And so it was fun. The videos, the sessions, the meetings that we had in between were actually like video premieres where we would get everyone on the call. We say, okay, look at the videos that were submitted. And then people would be like, oh my gosh, Tangie, look at you, right? And it was back and forth in the comments. It was back and forth live. And what we did was we told them how videos were performing, so that they could actually go back and record more. So we were testing, we were like, these messages are doing really well, messages from this, person are doing really well, let's get some more of those. Here's what those look like.
Hey, Coretta Brown here with Bridges to Empowerment.
Say that one again.
For the future of all kids, parents go out and vote.
Clearly, she was one of the top messages. Here's my favorite, Coretta.
And
Always from her car.
go vote, go. Hey, Coretta Brown here with Bridges to Empowerment. Go vote, go vote. October 30th, so to the polls, go vote.
I love Coretta because she really took it serious when we said, listen, you can mix up your call to action, right? We can say go vote, but also like there's early voting, there's events happening before then. So she mixed it up and actually changed her call to action in the different rounds. Let's get a mic over here to our friend. Oh, perfect. Okay.
I was just wondering, when did you actually go live with a lot of these videos? Was it before the campaign started, right when y'all started knocking on doors? Like, at what point in time did y'all start going live?
So y'all were knocking doors, if I'm not, I think long before we even started this digital campaign. So these videos went live 6 weeks ahead of that last November's election. So we released the first round, I believe, in early October or maybe late September. And every 2 weeks we cycled in a new batch.
But I will add, that was not our ideal timeline.
Yeah.
Ideal timeline is like, what are we in, July?
Yeah.
Like, August.
We would have loved to start it months before.
So I would, yeah.
Joshua, could you get a mic back here to our friend?
Hi, I'm Sandra. I'm from New York City, and it's incredible to see this work in Houston. We have a similar coalition in New York City, APA Voice, where we work with about 20 Asian American community organizations. Really just want to shout out and recognize your commitment to language justice, which is so incredibly important. I don't really hear it in a lot of these spaces, so it's really just important that you mention it and reaffirm it. I wanted to ask, where did you display these videos? Which platforms?
Yeah, good question. So we ran these ads on social and also programmatically. So they were run on Instagram, they were run on Facebook, and then they were run on high traffic websites across Harris County. So we actually got a list of those websites throughout those campaigns. So it turns out that, I think I mentioned, it was the local Fox website, it was the Weather Channel, it was actually ESPN, that was one of the websites that was the most highly trafficked. So imagine programmatic video is the video you have to watch before you watch the actual video that you're going to watch. So yeah, when you go on a website, usually a news website, before you can see what you want to watch, you're watching a video right before that. So
amazing.
That's what we ran.
That's great.
Okay. Mike's coming. Oh, thank you.
And Maria, are you able to share your budget?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, do you want to speak to it, or I can? I believe it was 150K. We didn't want to share it up front because we didn't want y'all to think that you couldn't do it, because this could actually have been done with a lower budget. But in terms of the reach, it was 150K across 6 weeks in terms of an advertising budget. Thank y'all for looking for the mic, and thank you to our awesome microphones.
My name is Calvin, I'm on the digital ASCIU. How do you guys handle doing captioning in multiple languages? Is it just like, I guess for us, it's like we're trying to do multiple languages, like captioning just advanced pages in this ways. Do you guys have another way to do it, or?
I'm not gonna lie to you, it was hard. It was time consuming. There's no other way to say it. There was no trick. We use Google Translate. I want to shout out Shane Hicks. He was our video producer who did these, over 150 videos. He, translated what they were saying. In some cases, folks sent us the translation, which was nice. It was nice of them to do, so when they sent their video in all the different, I believe Chinese Community Center, who did the 7 different languages, sent us some of those translations and what it looked like in terms of the characters. But it was honestly I was holding my breath the entire campaign that like no one would reach out and say like, what in the world was that text on the bottom of the video? That was not correct, right? But it worked out, so.
Wow.
It was hard, yeah.
I was gonna ask, do you guys do multiple like translations on your ads?
Did we? Yeah, so the videos were actually only video. We didn't have any, that's not true. We had a copy that accompanied it on Facebook and Instagram, but for those, we just use English. So the videos were the only thing that were translated into the different languages, so. And yeah, absolutely, and the copy, I believe, said we partnered with Houston in Action to get out the vote, and it mentioned the name of the organization.
You have a question over here?
Hello from behind the pole.
Okay.
So you're talking about a lot of page ads. Were
Yes.
there any that happened to go organically social?
Yeah, actually, we did end up posting a couple to the Houston in Action channel. And I think what we did, we saw the ones that were doing the best on the ad campaign, and those were the ones we decided to post organically. So, yeah.
Behind the pole
There we go.
Okay. First of all, did you consider TikTok, or are these too political for TikTok rules?
Hey, Coretta Brown here with Bridget Storm Power.
I'm like, did Coretta just come in the room? Special guest.
She's here.
Right. No,
Or
we
was it
didn't-
more like the audience might not be on TikTok?
No, we did consider TikTok, but I think what happened is, again, we'll see this at the end of our presentation, timing, right? It was about what is the quickest, what platforms can we get on the most quickly? We've got 6 weeks, you know, and so I think going forward, TikTok is definitely something we would look at because there is an audience, out of the groups that we covered, someone has an audience on TikTok.
Right, and then that leads in sort of to my second question, which may defeat the purpose of what you were trying to do, but did you ever think about, or have you worked with people who actually have followings, like who are already influencers and using that? Because obviously these are like novices, and you're working with most of them, it seems like they're novices, but what about like real influencers?
No to the real, quote unquote, real influencers, but I think my perspective on, I wish I had gone to the influencer session yesterday. My perspective on it is maybe a little bit different, and I'm talking a lot, so feel free to jump in, Chris. These folks are famous in their communities, okay? So like, when you talk about micro influencers, like that's who these folks represent. Everybody in, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody in Houston knows Miss Tangi. Like, she's just like, if you don't know her, you're not really from there, right? So like, that was the those were the kinds of folks who we highlighted for this campaign. Folks who, you know, we all probably have people from our hometown who were like, if we saw them, like, oh my God, and people were like, who's that? But no, it's like a big deal in your hometown. That's who these folks were. So I don't think anyone was like a professional influencer, which is actually what made it even cooler, I think, yeah.
And I can add that Houston actually does have like an influencer engagement program called HTX Talk, where we have a shared platform for our organizations and people who are interested in having a social presence from those organizations can connect with some of the micro influencers in the Houston area. And we're looking to grow that if anybody wants to send money this way. To create more of those collaborations, but it's primarily been around issue organizing. So we haven't figured out yet what that might look like for elections.
Okay, let's get one more question right here. Where's the mic, closest mic runner? Thank you.
Real quick question, just when you were recording these videos, did you start them as like standard videos and then turn them vertical and then like post those separately? For
Great
ads as well?
question. I love in the weeds questions. We actually have 2 versions of every video. We asked them to record it once vertically and once horizontally. The horizontal videos went on programmatic channels and the vertical videos went on social channels.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I would say too, like, one of the things that I think was a decision that the Backbone team made early on was to have these 3 waves.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped, like, what we're describing, like, chaotically would be, a lot to manage. But because of the 3 waves, it really did help to, like, get everything kind of in a rhythm. Too.
Yep.
So there's a lot of moving parts, but having that rhythm really helped.
Yeah.
And like a quick follow-up, like where did you have the most comment engagement and the most view engagement?
Yeah, good question. I believe Chinese Community Center might have had the most comment engagement. One thing I will say, micro-targeting these videos, I have never been in a situation where I've seen so much positivity. And for context, I used to work for Bill de Blasio, so. I was like, I don't know if it was the people who were seeing them, it was just like, oh my gosh, that's my auntie, or you know, that's my neighbor. I see you such and such. I mean, it was amazing. Just usually I'm prepared to hide comments because of like racism and all the things, but like it was just overwhelming. I don't think I recall one negative comment, which is saying a lot, right? So.
Jess, can I?
Yes.
Just one.
Let me get your mic. Hold
I'm
on.
sorry.
I know.
So I just wanted to follow up on your question about influencers.
Yeah.
I've met people at this conference that I personally think must take over the influencer space, and I love what you've done with seeming more real people than the Hassan Piker and Vosh universe of like worship me because I have all the answers. And I think we should take your model of like using these people that don't have the millions of cult followers and empower them, because this is beautiful. So thank you. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Not me about to start crying. Come on. Let's do two more, and then we're gonna show you all the rest of these. We have 2 more videos to show you.
Hey, yeah, so like me being a filmmaker, I'm like super big on aesthetic and things like that, like sound quality and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that like I would have done like this same thing, but it just would have looked significantly better? Do you think that would have been a disservice because it came across as too commercial because it's too well produced?
I love that. I think there's a careful balance you can strike, right? Because the videos, you already know, as a filmmaker, especially if you're doing post-production and the stuff you're gonna get is gonna be shaky, you're gonna have to do some color correction, it's already gonna be kind of like, I don't wanna say low quality, but I do think that the videos could have benefited from some better graphic work, and some better, we worked with what we had in the time that we had, but I think it could have been cool to put more like polished graphics around it.
Well, I think like one of the decisions y'all made early on too was that it needed to feel like they were filming it themselves.
It needs to feel like they made it,
that handheld kind of quality.
So then it would have been a disservice if it was too overly produced.
Yeah, I think it
could have, and it's maybe something to test. Who knows? But I think also what we wanted to impart, because we're always thinking about the outcome in terms of like getting people out to vote, but also the outcome for our membership, which is that like, does this feel more accessible to them next time around? Does this feel like something they can achieve next time around? And so for that reason, we kind of were intentional about we shot everything on phone. We're like, it's only gonna be on phone.
Yeah.
And those were conscious choices.
We also have one coming up that's like a little more produced, and you'll see, but it says something that it was a top performing video, right? So we'll show you that. I believe we have one here. We'll get y'all in 1 second. Let me just.
So my questions are on project management. So I'm assuming because you're the contractor, you had a project manager for the campaign. From the organizational perspective, was there a single project manager? Like, who was that? Like, it just seems really big.
Yeah, I was definitely the main.
The 2 of us, yeah.
The main point of contact.
Yeah.
Jess and I were kind of just in one-on-one contact a lot, and then we had like kind of the team calls and things.
Yeah.
That was a more scheduled activity, but we did have, so there was like a creative point of contact that we had on our side, on the organizational side. We had a creative point of contact and a video point of contact. So Davis helped to step in anytime there was like a video need, and then Evan, who created all of the visual language, was the point of contact for as that needs to be implemented. And then we had 3 member communications coordinators who were actually out there working with members to get videos, to help them through the process of sending videos, all the, data.
Those member coordinators were, they were the ones who were like, don't forget, the next video submission deadline is tomorrow. They were just on top of it. So I did my part by creating a Google Calendar invite for every submission deadline, and just invited everybody in the campaign to that. So they got a 24-hour notice that the videos were due. I'm surprised that it worked. Okay, we have more questions here. Let me just show y'all 2 more videos, and then we'll get them.
Yes.
I have a question in regards to.
One second. encouraging each other to submit, but people got real competitive, like, watch what I'm about to send you next week. I mean, this is
Oh, it didn't pause, but shout out to Vanessa Alonso, the cantante, that's the woman singing, who's a mariachi opera singer.
Amazing.
Recuerda, este 8 de noviembre, sal a votar por ti, por tu familia, por tu comunidad.
Y'all can just tell, these are people's aunties, like, it's so cool, right? Okay, let's get the two questions over here. Yes.
My one question in regard to security. I know you were just saying that some of the people are known, but how you were just saying like it's somebody's auntie.
Yeah.
Did you have in place something, and how did you approach people to say like, if you know they'll put themselves out there, are you able to help wipe them from the web? You know, not find their information. So if anything is, you know, security reaching that way,
Great.
especially if you're trying to get already known people.
Great question. Yeah, no, that was something that we talked about in some of the sessions, and it was honestly because of their questions. They were like, you know, somebody didn't get my social security number if I do this video. You know, like the questions your grandma asked. And the truth is some people decided not to share their name for that reason, right? Some people were like, actually, I think this person's more comfortable being public. We were clear that it would be targeted to their neighbors, and so I think that made people feel a little bit more comfortable, but there is inherent risk in, you know, being out there, right?
And I'll just add that with regard to like helping someone in a crisis moment, if like shit goes down, that is something that we were not prepared for in 2022, and luckily we didn't have that situation come up. But in 2023, we're definitely going to be prepared for that.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Shameless plug. I am preparing to do a digital security training soon virtually, and so keep up with us if you're interested in cybersecurity, but also like staying safe and doxing and things like that. So
Yes.
So obviously, Harris County is more of an urban area, or at least Houston is. How would you do this campaign in a more rural area where neighborhoods aren't as like compact? There might not be as many community organizations, especially diverse ones.
yeah, thoughts, Chris? I mean, because Houston in Action, this has a lot to do with their organizing ability, but
Yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, everyone, you know, if we're willing to all accept that, you know, the folks you're seeing on screen are influencers, I think everyone influences in different ways. And I think like you would just have to assess what that looks like for that context, and then adjust. You know, for most part, I think in large part, the people we targeted were people that we had in our universe. So that came from voter lists. So the targeting doesn't necessarily change online or through tactics, but maybe the way in which, the individual targeting, but maybe the distribution could look a little different depending on how folks are organized.
yeah. Okay.
From behind the pole again. How did you handle approvals? Did you get any videos that you were like, nah, this shouldn't go out?
Let me tell y'all how I handle approvals in general. You have until 5 p.m. to let me know if you want this to go up. I mean, I gave them more time than that, but they sent us the video, we, you know, edited and we put the captions on there, etc. We sent it back and we said, okay, you got 48 hours to let us know if you have any changes. Otherwise, this will be cycled into the next round. And so very rarely folks reached out and said, oh, actually my name is spelled, you know, this way, or actually that, but we just assume if you're sending it to us, we're assuming it's approved, and unless we hear otherwise, so.
Yeah, I think we probably had one video where we're like, you know,
oh shoot.
I think I ended up having like a sidebar with that organization to be like,
Chris,
because I think it was very.
You didn't approve it, yeah.
I was like, personally, I'm not lined up with this, but I ended up having a sidebar with that organization because it was very much like one of their new hires, was like a volunteer turned new hire. And I was just like, it was just a little bit of framing, you know, and like how they presented the situation. So we just kind of handled that one off.
Yeah. Can we get a mic to the middle?
So this is more future ideas, questions. So I know this is a lot about getting out the vote, but what about, are you thinking about registering? And I know like, we talked about Texas a lot and how like voter suppression, like getting those registrations out, like we know how difficult it is to get people registered in Texas. Is that something we're thinking about for the future?
Yeah, this year, right now. And I think in terms of how it shows up for our digital campaigns, I think we still have some questions to answer, but yeah, definitely.
Always be organizing. Every year's election year. These are all hashtags.
Hi, thank you. My name is Diana with Faith in Action. I'm their digital organizer, and because we have networks all across the country, something I have trouble with is convincing our organizers and our leaders that they're like worth it, that they are influencers, that they are people that people look up to. How was the process of convincing them or persuading them to be on video? Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
That question.
So, we talked a little bit about the opt-in process. People chose to be involved. And the way that people opted in was when we had an interest form essentially that actually was like across the board for voter mobilization in 2022, what do you want to do? And check this box if you're canvassing, check this box if you want to do text, check this box if you want to do phone, check this box if you want to do digital. And that's where they opted in, and then we said, okay, let's go. Got people together, and so that way it was very much like people who. The tricky part about that is that sometimes like the person checking the box is not the person who actually is going to be doing the work too. Right. So that can affect things. But for the most part, and like I said before, these are folks that we've known for a long time, and so yeah. And for the most part, I think our folks feel worth it. I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule, but yeah.
No, I think there was a lot. In these intermittent meetings, there was a lot of hyping people up. I can't lie, and that's maybe where my team kind of came into play. And your member coordinators did a great job too. But we started every meeting with like Beyonce, Houston. I don't know how many people were here. It was you're that girl, Miss Tangi. Look at you. This video is it. Let's get another one. It was that route, right? It was like, wow, have you ever done this before? Because you need to be doing this on a national level. It was a lot of affirming. And once we started it, everyone kind of took it from there. They were like, wow, Mr. So-and-so, yeah, that was really good. It was, yeah, absolutely. Love is revolutionary.
I can't say enough for the sharing on the calls. That really did, I think. When folks saw other folks doing it, was a big, that was energizing.
Yeah, we would premiere someone's video during the call, and they would be like this, right, with their camera on, and people would be like, no, that was great, Coretta, what do you mean, And so that was huge for everyone, Let's get two more. Is there a mic close by? Oh, perfect.
Okay. Some of my questions were answered from the other questions, but when you were sending out the request again, I know now you've mentioned that folks opted in. Outside of the script and maybe video parameters, what other standards did you set? Was there camera quality that was part, audio quality that was part, and were any videos that were submitted rejected, or was that competition kind of sets it up for that, so that it's not disappointing necessarily?
Yeah, great question. So Backbone, we have a selfie guide. It's very cute. It's a one-pager. It tells people how to hold the camera, shoulder length, face the light, face the sun, if you have a ring light. We actually walk people through that one-sheeter beforehand. We didn't necessarily speak to camera quality. Most of the things we got were usable. We transferred files via WeTransfer. And so that was helpful in terms of not corrupting any of the file sizes. But for the most part, people really followed the selfie guide really well. And that selfie guide, I think, it even tells you don't wear too many colors, and so folks really stuck to that. So you have to think about it. These folks are being really literal. They're not influencers, so they're hanging on to every piece of advice you're giving them, and they stuck to it. They did. We also had, again, the help of the member coordinators who went to people's houses in some cases to help them. Right.
Part two-ish. I'm the communications manager with the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network,
Awesome.
And we're protecting and serving immigrant refugee communities, and then a lot of those folks are undocumented.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm still thinking through how that could.
Yeah.
I know you're mentioning the training on the digital privacy protections, but I'm just thinking through any disclaimers. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to even put anyone in that position.
I know.
So I guess thinking through anonymity while still being
voice could be powerful. I think
Yeah.
voice and text could be really powerful, and honestly, I mean, you have an incredible filmmaker, like the person in the front row, you could even maybe figure out like some sort of shadowed, like it's their silhouette, right? And these folks shouldn't have to be in the shadows, maybe that's the campaign, right? Not just turn it into a brainstorm.
You can silhouette with the deep voice like on the project.
There we go, right.
So like for like the average entrepreneur, for like the average business owner, could they look at like some things that you guys are teaching and model their campaigns or to like generate business after this? And if not, and if so, like could they follow it to a T, or would there be like some variation from like yeah.
I think our hope is that folks, anyone in this room takes this and does it better. Like, please, like give us your tips. That's why we wanted this to be an open discussion. Because a lot of this was us figuring it out as we went. And the whole point of sharing at a place like Networks is that people can see it and hopefully riff on it and make it even better. I think more people in these communities, these folks exist in every one of our communities, right? We need to make sure that we're spotlighting them and coming out of these conferences focused on them.
We have a question here.
Okay, let me see if I can do one more slide. Hold on. This is the fifth group celebrating. I don't know if it's Celebrate Often is our final tip. It was our bonus tip. So again, those regular communications were really helpful. We were celebrating throughout. We were celebrating how many impressions folks were getting. We were celebrating what those video completion rates look like. We were educating these folks on what those terms even meant, right, throughout. We are prioritizing, Chris, go ahead, you were gonna talk about this a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, just one of the things that we kind of try to center in our debrief is not just like the quantitative or like massively collected data, but the anecdotes, the interactions that people shared, the feelings they had. And we made space for that, and that was, I think, ultimately like one of the most cherished parts of the campaign, like looking back. And this was with our full group beyond just the folks doing the digital. So.
Yeah, that was really powerful for me to come to the debrief. They spent about 5 minutes on data, and then they were like, okay, now we're gonna split you up into breakout groups so you can share the stories that you experienced on the ground. I was just like, wait, what? Like, awesome, revolutionary. So really quick, this is just what we would do next time. We would start earlier. We would grow our base of trusted community messengers. We get even more customized with the folks that we are working with. Lean more on historical data. So who engaged with the campaign last year? Can we re-engage them? So let's get those questions. That's just a quick overview. Thank y'all for asking throughout. That way we got to everybody.
Thank y'all first for the presentation. The core of the idea of these videos is something I've been thinking on a lot and hearing from folks in the room. If the idea of influencers seems overwhelming or confusing, I can't remember the name of the book, but it talked about the dissemination of trends and ideas, and the term the author used was connectors. And the fact that it really is just about who in a community or who in an area connects us all and has that influence. So I plan to go back to my team and maybe it's sitting down like, who got you into this work? Who do you know? Who are your professors? Where's your grocery store? Who do you see there? And figuring out who can be that person to give that message.
Absolutely.
We can send them out.
Yeah, we'll definitely send these back. Was there a final question?
Reporting from behind the pole also again. I'll introduce myself. I'm Natika Samuels. I'm from the National Education Association. And we have been working on a member influencer program for the last year or so. So that's part of why I wanted to come here is the spirit is of sharing. We've been doing this super successfully. And when we talk about influencers, when I was asking about real influencers, I think that might mean somebody who only has like 1,000 TikTok followers. It doesn't have to be like, we have one educator who has like 5 million followers and it's very expensive to use her.
Yeah.
It's like $10,000 a video. So we don't use her very often. But I would say that some of these people that we worked with have never ever been paid to do a video before. We try to pay them like, industry standard because we do have the budget to do that. A lot of them might be willing to do that work for free, but we're a labor union, so we don't want people to do work for free. And happy to talk to anybody or connect with anybody who wants to talk about like starting a member influencer program, but we are currently working on a goal to have one educator in every state make a video about the importance of joining their union.
Wow.
And it's hard work because it's a lot of manual searching through TikTok to find people who are willing to put themselves out there. But I'd say that the benefit of doing it that way is that they have a little bit more polish. They aren't afraid of being in front of the camera. They have their own ideas about how to make things go viral. So I think this is really awesome, and I can see how us working more at the state level could trickle down to the local level. And we're not in the business of like training influencers yet,
Sure.
but that comes up a lot. They're saying like, oh, we have this great person in our school who everyone goes to for advice, or everyone knows that this person's in the know. How can we get them out there? And this is the answer to that. But if you are wanting to go to a higher level, there's like definitely a lot of ways to do that, and we're building this plane while we're flying it. So again, if anybody wants to talk about it, I'm happy to, but it can be done.
Absolutely. Tell us your name one more time in the mic.
Natika Samuels.
Natika Samuels, got it. Awesome.
I love to talk about it.
Thank you all. This is for the people who want extra credit. Feel free to try this by testing out a call to action. You can write it out, consider your goal, your medium, your audience, your messenger. Record an example that you could share with a potential community influencer and show them how you would want it done, okay? And we would love to see it too. Connect with us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, and share your feedback. Wait, get the link.